أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So inshallah we will continue with Surah Fatiha. We studied so far Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. And inshallah today we will study Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'een. It is from the 15th ray, the 5th phrase. This is from the book The Rays, and the link was shared in the WhatsApp group. You can click on that link. If you scroll down, we are going to study the 5th phrase.
And there's it's not a typo with the Nasai. After, like under the Ain, it should be the Kasra. It looks like a schoon, but it's just a font issue.
Okay. So Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'een. And who is going to read for us? Since we have so many sisters, of course, that brother must read. Otherwise, we won't hear brother's voice today.
They were announcing Jumu'ah prayer, the MSA folks. They were saying like we will have a ladies halakha and then gentlemen halakha. I was thinking we should join the ladies halakha because this is our, the usual setup.
Yes. So inshallah, let's start with the 5th phrase.
Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help. Before pointing out the proof in this phrase, it occurred to my heart to briefly relate a true journey of the imagination based on the explanation in the 29th letter. It is as follows. Once I was searching for miracles of the Quran, as explained in the Risale-e-Nur, especially in the Quranic commentary, Signs of Miraculousness, and the 8 symbols, I found 4 or 5 miraculous predictions in the final verse of Surah Fateha. I even found a historical miracle in the phrase, "The day we shall save you in your body." I discovered multiple flashes of miraculousness in many of its words, and even miraculous subtle points in some of its letters. Around that time, while reciting the Fatiha during the prayer, a question occurred to my heart to reveal a miracle in the letter Noon of Nabudu and Nasta'een. The question was, why wasn't it said Abudu, I worship, and Asta'een, I seek help, meaning I worship and I seek help? Why was it said using the first person plural Noon, meaning we worship you and we seek help from you? Suddenly, a broad arena for a journey of the imagination opened up through the door of that Noon. I came to know and see, with the certainty of witnessing it firsthand, the mighty mystery and great benefit of praying in congregation, and that the single letter is a miracle. It was as follows. At that time, while performing the prayer in the Bayezid Mosque in Istanbul, I said, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. I looked and saw the congregation in that mosque saying the same thing as me. When they fully participated in and affirmed this claim of mine, as well as my supplication, guide us, another veil was lifted. I saw that all the mosques in Istanbul had become like one giant Bayezid mosque. Just like me, they were saying, you alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help. They were setting their seals on my claims and my supplications, saying amen to them, or Ameen to them. As they took on the form of intercessors from me, another veil opened in my imagination. I saw that the Islamic world had taken on the form of a massive mosque. Mecca and the Kaaba became its mihrab. The rows of all Muslims performing the prayer faced that sacred mihrab in circular formations, saying just like me, you alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help. Guide us. Each individual among them supplicates, make this claim, and affirms it on behalf of everyone. They also make all the others intercessors for themselves. I thought to myself, the path and claim of such a vast congregation cannot be wrong, and its supplication will not be rejected. It drives away satanic whispers. While observing and affirming the great benefits of praying in congregation, another veil was opened. I saw that the universe is a supreme mosque, and all groups of creatures are in a supreme prayer. It was as if each group was performing a kind of prayer in congregation through its own unique worship and the tongue of its disposition. They responded with extensive worship to the all encompassing lordship of the glorious object of worship. To do so, each one affirmed the testimonies and declarations of divine unity of all the others, taking a stance that proved the exact same result. While observing this, suddenly yet another veil was opened. I saw that the universe, which is a macroanthropos, says, "Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in," you alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help, through the tongue of its disposition. Many of its parts say through the tongue of their capacity and innate need, and its conscious beings say through their verbal tongues. Together, they demonstrate their worship before the compassionate lordship of their Creator. In exactly the same way, I saw that the atoms, faculties, and senses in my bodies, just like the bodies of each of my companions in that supreme congregation, which are like a miniature universe, also declare, "You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help," through the tongue of their obedience and need toward the lordship of their Creator. By doing so, they show they act according to the divine command and will, and that at every moment they are in need of their Creator's grace, mercy, and assistance. Having observed with wonder both the sacred mystery of the congregation in prayer and the beautiful miracle of the letter Noon, I exited through the door of the Noon just as I had entered. I said, "Alhamdulillah." I became accustomed to reciting the phrase, "You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help," on behalf of those three congregations and my companions, both great and small. Now the introduction is finished, and we come to the main point. Here is a very brief introduction of the proof pointed to by "You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help." Firstly, we see with our own eyes that in the universe, and especially on the face of the earth, there is a tremendous continuous activity and creativity taking place with perfect order. Within this, an absolute lordship acts with compassion and careful administration. It comes to the aid of the countless living beings in their pleas for help, and their actual, dispositional, and verbal requests and prayers. It responds to each of them actively with perfect wisdom and grace. Within this manifestation of aid and response, we see the manifestations of an absolute deity and a universal object of worship. A sound mind and the eye of belief can see this absolute deity responding to the innate and voluntary worship of all creatures, especially living beings, and particularly the various groups of humans, in thousands of different ways. Moreover, all heavenly decrees and prophets also bring news of this. Secondly, as symbolized by the Noon and Nabudu, we worship, each of the three congregations mentioned in the introduction, and all of them together, are engaged in various kinds of innate and voluntary worship. This is unmistakably and self-evidently a grateful response to an object of worship. It is an endless and indubitable testimony to the existence of a most holy object of worship. And symbolized by the Noon of Nasta'in, we seek help, those three congregations, that is, every group and every individual, from the entirety of the universe down to the congregation of atoms in a single body, have pleas for help and prayers through their actions and their states. This undoubtedly testifies to a compassionate administrator who hastens to their aid and answers their prayers with acceptance. For example, as stated in the 23rd word, the three kinds of prayers offered by all creatures on earth are accepted in a truly wondrous way, far beyond expectation. This decisively testifies to a merciful sustainer and an answerer of prayers. Yes, seeds and pits pray to their Creator through the tongue of their capacity, each asking to become a tree or a spike of grain. We see these prayers being accepted right before our eyes. Similarly, through the tongue of innate need, all animals ask someone for their sustenance from places they cannot reach, and for the vital necessities they are powerless to obtain. We see right before our eyes that all their prayers, made in that tongue of innate need, are accepted. He wisely makes wondrous and unconscious creatures hasten to their aid at exactly the right time. This clearly testifies to a generous creator. Thus, by analogy with these two categories, the wondrous acceptance of all kinds of prayers made through the verbal tongue, especially the prayers of the prophets, peace be upon them, and the spiritually elite, testifies to the proof of divine unity contained within وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, and from you alone do we seek help.
Jazakallah khairan. So, let's take a summary in regards to the first parts. Who wants to just
First part meaning the noon.
the noon part? Yes. The noon part, anyone wants to share what they get from the first part? As we speak it out, it's going to become more understandable. It will stay with us. Might be a little bit of a repetition, but it's good. Let's see. And also, I'm going to grade you based on how good of a summary you make. So, brothers are shy today, understandably, because we are outnumbered.
Outnumbered, underqualified. That is offended, so maybe I decided on intelligence.
Okay. Like, was it too easy? Was it too hard? Why is the silence? Okay. Mr. Maria has a comment there. It's proving, but it's coming. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. I don't think I can summarize because I often find these texts to be very dense for me, and I'm not cut out to understand language that's very philosophical and, high grade. But at least the comment for me that, or the point that kind of stuck out was the voluntary worship part, especially when it comes to the author describes how everything in nature worships Allah in its capacity, in sometimes ways that we don't understand in whatever tongue. For example, the seed will ask to grow and become a tree and fulfill, I guess, that purpose. But how does author know or assume it's a voluntary? I know, because the reason this clashes with me is because in my understanding, the only two creatures that were given free will, which inherently means that you can choose to worship or not, is the insan, human beings, and the jinn. And so how do you look at a seed and say it chooses to worship its creator as opposed to it naturally just does, like an angel, for example? So that is kind of what I'm confused about. How do we know that it's voluntary?
Well,
I couldn't find it, but probably it's somewhere there. Do you exactly remember the sentence, maybe? Or I can search it here.
was it at the end or at the beginning? Yes, seeds and pits pray to their creator through the tongue of their capacity, each asking to become a tree or spike of grain. We see these prayers being accepted right before our eyes.
So a sound mind and the eye of belief can see this absolute unity coming to the involuntary worship of all creatures, especially living beings.
Oh, okay. where is it?
Before secondly.
Before the second bit.
Yeah.
A sound mind,
Mm-hmm.
eye of belief. So it might be misunderstanding. A sound mind and eye of belief can see this absolute deity responding to the innate and voluntary worship of all creatures. So when in the previous parts, he talked about both innate worship and also voluntary worship. And with voluntary, he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was referring to the worship that the conscious beings does. So yeah, when it says innate and voluntary worship of all creatures, it's not every creature has this voluntary worship. At least this sentence does not imply that. But thank you for bringing this up. Like I was thinking when I first read this text, I was thinking, oh, maybe we should talk about this different type of worships because it's repeated a few times in the text, and I forgot before you asked. So the author is talking about the worship through the tongue of capacity, tongue of innate need, or voluntary, like a verbal worships, asking. So when he talks about, for instance, the tongue of capacity, we can take it as, and I believe this is how you took it, which is right way to take it for sure, at least from one perspective. With their capacity, within their capacity, they worship, but we may not be aware of it, right? You can take it as also in a different way. So for instance, the word used was very, actually, like a perfect choice to open up the discussion when you said naturally, right? So if I have a binoculars, right, and I want to put a zoom function, so what I do, I mean, I just figured this out while playing with the toy, right? You play with the distance of this lens to the other lens, and it kind of acts as a focusing mechanism. You do this. When you do this, some people would say, yeah, of course it will work this way because there's physics, right? The distance between two lenses would yield such and such results. Author takes it as, no, actually there's a worship here through the tongue of capacity. What it means, when you arrange something in a certain way, within this arrangement, there's a capacity. The capacity to the thing that we observe as a focusing. And when you establish this capacity, you are asking the creator, right? Oh, creator, I arrange the parts in a way you ask me to do. And with this arrangement, I'm asking you, focus it. And then the creator focuses it for you. Because there is no such thing as lens zooms the wave or focuses, etc. There's no such thing. You're just filling an application form and saying that oh creator, I fill the section 2.5 just like you asked me to do. Okay? Or you can take it as, again, a seed, for instance. I mean, that was like a human manipulation. The same way the seed, within a certain context, if you arrange or if you find certain things are arranged in a specific way, there is a tongue of capacity, a certain order manifested there. And within this capacity, there is a worship. Oh, creator,
make the seed flourish. Okay? So seed, through its capacity to become a tree, from our perspective, asking the Creator, make me a tree. So instead of talking about, the fixed physical laws, again, he's talking about the laws of worship, how worship works, right? If there is a capacity established in front of your eyes, you know that to some extent, because sometimes it fails, even if the capacity is there, the potentiality, right? If you see a potential being manifested somewhere, you know that it will be accepted. A properly put seed on a ground and properly watered, this potential, right? Asking Creator, make me tree, make me a flower. And then you see that it is answered. So he also talks about the tongue of need. Right? The example, for instance, he would give a tree or a plant. You see that there's a need there. It needs water. It needs minerals, right? And what happens if there's a tree with the roots? You see that these minerals almost like a running toward the plant. If you study them, and we have plant biologists, right? My claim, and please, nullify it. If you study the plants and their environment, you will see as if there's nutritions running towards the plants, as if there's a call, right? And then they go and start feeding it. How do you explain this? Our friends would say, oh yeah, there's such and such process, there's such and such, I don't know, movement, attraction, Brownian motion, whatever. All these names, right? Made up names, as the Quran says the Creator says in Quran, you give all these made up names that we did not send any authority. Anyway, author says, no, there's another law there, law of sustenance, right? When you see a need manifested in front of your eyes, this need act as a worship, asking. Through its need, it's asking for nutrition, asking for water, and it is accepted. When it is accepted, it is given. Same goes with you, right? You have this innate need of breathing, and it is answered every second. Right? This is what it means, what author means with the tongue of need. When you see a need, you will see this law is run and it is sustained. When you see a capacity, a potentiality manifested in front of you, you will see that the same law is, the running, and then it will be sustained. And then there is another type of asking, worshipping, which is through tongue, as we do, like actual or oral asking. Oh, my Creator, please give shifa to me. Right? It's a voluntary, as I understand, yes.
Inshallah, we will give a break in 4 minutes, but before we give a break for Maghrib, so I would like to start from the very beginning, where he is stating how he ended up with this conversation. Like, where did this idea come from to him? Because when it comes to asking or worshiping, as Sister Maria was mentioning, this is something that I do. I do worship. Like, this is our general perception. Angels worship, jinns worship. And I don't know what that means because I haven't seen them, but Quran says so. So let us accept that this is true. And then, but I do know that I worship. Despite this being the case, in Surah Fatiha, every time I do my worship, I say, we worship. Like, where does this we come from? Who else is worshiping? On behalf of whom am I saying we worship? So from this question, the author starts really questioning the nature of worship first. And interestingly, he started with the way we understand. As we worship, he says, oh, not only I am asking for my creator, but I am asking on behalf of the people who is praying right next to me in this congregation. So this is a good start. Like he didn't immediately jump to the skies or anything, but very gradually saying that we do worship as everybody in this mosque. Then he took it one step further, said, actually, all the believers in Istanbul that's praying at this moment, we worship, we seek your help. This we in there refers to that because all of us really standing before the Creator. So it's a bigger congregation than only this small mosque. In the other part, like we can extrapolate this a little further. It could be taken as across the globe, everybody is actually standing together, making circles around Kaaba, if you would like to think it as such. Or you can even extend it further. Let's add this to our imagination now. Break the time wall as well and say that across the time, like for centuries, people are standing shoulder to shoulder and past and future really asking, saying that we worship you, because 14 centuries ago, it was the same prayer, it was the same idea of we worship and we seek your help. Today it is as such, another 1400 years later, same idea. Even in this regard, you can, I mean, if you would like to use your imagination for good, you can even imagine Prophet being the Imam of this congregation. So I guess this is a very good example of how to use imagination, but let's get back to topic. From here, then, we really start forcing the boundaries of what is worship then? What do I mean when I say worship? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We worship, like Ahmed and I, we worship. What do we mean by that? And what sort of a help do we seek? And what else is asking or seeking help? So our beginning point was in the prayer when we say we worship, we seek your help. The first thing that comes to mind is, as we just prayed Maghrib together, oh, I am not only speaking on behalf of myself, but I am appreciating that I stay shoulder to shoulder with other believers, and we proclaim the same thing. But before we go any further, what do we mean when we say I worship? What I mean by that? Like if your friend who is coming from a totally different background, maybe an atheist, maybe a Christian, your friend saw you as you are standing in the prayer and told you, what were you doing? And you said, I worship. Like, what does worship mean? When you say, I was worshiping, what would you mean? And what do we mean when we say, we worship in Fatiha? What am I expressing at this point? Like,
If give an example,
yes, like, go ahead.
open up the discussion. Today, I attended let's say a talk. The guy was talking about a specific technology, and this technology is like a black box. You don't know what is happening inside. So when you implement it, you don't know whether it will work or not, right? And the guy mentioned this by saying that, which is, I think we heard it in many other contexts as well. It's like a religion. When you implement it, you need to pray. You need to worship, right? And what he meant, obviously, is that if you have the capacity, you would do it yourself. But when you don't know, when you don't have the capacity, and when you don't have any other options, you pray, meaning you don't know what will happen. And that was the understanding of the worship.
And I guess if you were eating, if I were to ask you, what are you doing? you said, I am eating, and I say, what do you mean eating? Then probably you will explain as, oh, I need to feed the body for energy and whatnot, and this is what I am doing, like explaining what you were doing, right? So what is worship?
I just want to like share, I guess, what's coming to mind, and it's not a lot. It's just that when I think of worship, I think of recognizing that entity's perfection or greatness. And when you worship either with your tongue or your actions, then you're like aligning yourself with that idea that this that I'm worshiping is great, or at least for starters.
So I think this also came up in one of our prophetic discussions on a Tuesday, that what worship actually is. Because we often think of worship as standing in congregational prayers or in prayer, the 5 daily prayer that we do. We mainly attribute that to worship. But then I also read that zikr is worship, learning about your religion is worship. So then the definition of worship is like really broad. Like, it's beyond copying the actions of prayers and reciting the memorized verses. It's beyond that. It's more spiritual. It's more broader than that. And I think it's something that I truly have not really understood completely. But I think it is not limited to one way of practicing or praying, anything like that. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. As we are passing the microphone to Sister Zareen, I would like to just paraphrase what I understood from the comments that were made so far. So Natalia said, appreciating something great, something perfect. That will have an important share at some point. That's correct. That's a good start. And then, yes, practically, we do worship. Fasting is a worship and whatnot. But from this, maybe we can come to what is common in fasting and praying, so that both of them are worship, although their format is totally different. So it's not simply reciting a word, because while fasting, you're not even reciting a single word. But what does fasting represent that standing up in the prayer also represent, which is common for both of them? It's an act of worship. What does that mean? Mr. Zareen?
I guess I was just wondering if there is a state where I'm not worshiping. Like sometimes it feels like for example, with the religious actions, that is a state of worship. And then when I leave those actions to do something about my day-to-day life, that feels like maybe it's not worship anymore. Like, am I supposed to be, if this verse is saying to you alone, to you alone I worship and to you alone I seek help from, it kind of implies to me that I should continuously be in this state, but it feels like I'm not. So maybe like how do I expand worship to something that kind of seems sometimes almost like mindless, that I'm not even like thinking about what I'm doing. It's like kind of just this automatic thing. And sometimes I feel like if someone were to ask me like, why do you like worship, or what is it that you're worshiping? What do you mean by worship? I don't think I could really answer it with something like coherent. It's just like, it's what I'm it's what I do. So I feel like I guess I don't really have like a straight answer, but I think defining it properly is important, because right now even I still wonder like, what is it? It seems like something very important that should be in every aspect of my life, but how do I do it properly if I'm relegating to a specific time to pray, specific time to make dhikr? If it's not in my whole life, then what does it mean?
And as we were discussing at Tuesday discussion last week, Salih alayhi salam comes to his people and he starts directly by saying, worship God alone, because there is no deity other than him for you, which would imply that actually they were worshiping other deities. So if Salih alayhi salam was to enter today in this room, he would say the same to us. He would say, worship God alone, do not worship other deities, because there's no deity other than him, like besides him. Definitely we don't turn towards anybody and pray towards them. But what would it mean that if he were to say the same word to us, which he does, because in Quran still we read Salih alayhi salam's address and he's addressing us. And he tells me, saying that Yusuf, don't worship anybody else other than the creator. Do I worship anybody other than the creator? Let's try to push the boundaries of what worship means so that, yes, 5 daily prayers is a form of worship, but as Sister Zareen is saying, are the moments of worship only those isolated moments of my day? Then would Salih alayhi salam rightfully come and say, other than those 5 daily prayer times, there's no worship? Is this the case? Or do I worship somebody else outside those moments? What is worship? Let's push it a little more. We might have talked about this before, but it's not going to be a repetition. I think in this context, we have new people as well. It's going to be a good reminder. What is worship? And again, the word we are using here is ubudiyya and abd, ibadah. So these are the words. And just one anecdote before I pass it to Atik. Also in the entrance of Surah Baqarah, as we were covering at Penn, Quran talks about the book being guidance, then talks about 3 personality types. First being muttaqeen, second being kafir, third being munafiq. After describing this, immediately the next verse is, Ya ayyuhan nasu ubudu rabbakum. O people, worship your Lord. After this categorizing us to those 3 categories and saying that find yourself wherever you are in these 3 categories. But here comes the common command to humanity. It doesn't say, oh, believers, because it talks about muttaqeen, right? It doesn't say, oh, muttaqeen, worship your creator. It says, oh, humanity, oh, people, worship your creator. So what is worship?
I just wanted to ask if we at some point discussed, the word, I guess what we're referring to in the ayah, na'budu, right, and how it relates to abdi. Briefly mentioned that maybe we did, but yeah, discussing what worship is a very ambiguous statement. There's not a lot of context to it, but when you define na'budu as in, relating to being an abd or being a slave, that adds a lot more context to what we're referring to.
So the comment is, just to clarify what we mean, since the word that's being mentioned in here is na'budu, the act, as the word Quran puts it, we do the act of being an abd. The same word we say, abduhu wa rasuluhu, when we refer to the Prophet, for example, either translated as slave or sometimes servant. So really the ibadah, worship, is the act of being in this state, being a slave, being a servant. But what does it mean to be an abd and do it as an act? The other microphone is there.
I think one aspect that comes to mind is of worship is the aspect of fear. I can imagine, for example, if we are told, if, like you said, somebody came today to tell you, don't worship anybody but your creator. Like we all work somehow, right? So we all have a boss or a manager. For example, and I think, I guess I'll just speak for myself because I don't want to speak on anybody else. But sometimes, you catch yourself fearing upsetting your boss, for example, or fearing, or you doing things because you fear their reaction, or you want to please them, or you want to make them proud. Like suddenly you're just doing your job, and what you are being paid to do becomes like an Olympics of trying to please your boss, and like, you know, your whole world kind of revolves around the emotional state of your boss. And I think, you know, unfortunately, that is kind of like a way of worshiping, because it becomes so important to you. And just even your boss frowns at you, or, you know, looks at you, you don't even, it may not even have anything to do with you, but your whole day you're just thinking about like, oh, what did I do? What should I do better? And this and that. You come to work early on time and you leave, you make sure you're the last one to leave because you want to leave an impression. But like, for example, do I rush to make prayer on time, for example? Do I rush to do voluntary prayers? Like I rush to do voluntary things just to impress my PI, for example? So sometimes I feel like, you know, unfortunately, that's kind of worship sometimes, you know. That's just an example in the modern world that I feel like, you know, people can relate to.
And that's a very good point. Why do we try to impress our boss? Like, where does the desire come from? If your boss, if you went to the work in the morning and you learned that, oh, actually the boss was fired last night and there's a new boss, would you fear the guy anymore? No, you're the boss. Like relatively, that person is just a loser, homeless probably at this point, if they have some home loan like mortgage. So because you needed something and it was at the hand of that person. So you recognize your neediness. It could be money, it could be just fame, whatever. And that person was holding the reins. So you realize your neediness. This is why you were turning towards that person. Like that boss-worker relationship or master-slave relationship, I guess we just rebranded it in this age. In the olden age, it was master-slave, and the terminology comes from there, abdness, recognizing your neediness and acting according to that. Recognizing your neediness and acting according to that is being an abd and doing ibadah. Like worship should come from there. Recognizing my neediness. But you can recognize your neediness, but if you go and ask for that need from the janitor, people will make fun of you, would say that, okay, yes, you need money, but the janitor is not the person to ask for this. Go and ask it from the boss, right? So in this life, what are my needs, number one? And to whom do I turn to fulfill those needs? This is the question. What are our basic needs in this life? Can somebody count needs? Just, I guess, water, food, light, hearing. Hearing is a huge need. Like sometimes when I get showered, water gets into my ear, and I give this example annoyingly frequently. But I lose my balance when one of my ears is closed and the other one is not. Like I become annoying at those moments as well. Like kids, stay away from me at this moment type of a person. So that means how needy I am to properly hear, to properly see. But who fulfills those needs? To whom do I turn? What do you think the answer is? Like to whom, like if Salih alayhi salam, as we were studying on Tuesday, to come in and say that Yusuf, don't worship anybody other than your Lord, that keyword is there. He doesn't even say your creator, he says your Lord. Who is my Lord? What do you think? Who is your Lord? The sense of Rabbness, this is what I would like to highlight as well. Let's bring this to our attention.
I think we discussed also like I think probably on Tuesday something like when someone comes in and tells you to worship your Lord, in this case, your sustainer, right? The sustainer of all of your needs, I think is like the answer we're kind of going for. But I also think that just the way the question is framed, right? It's like, well, how do you know I wasn't doing it? Right? Like the question implies that I wasn't. Like someone's reminding me or correcting me to do the right thing, which again, like just to like paint the whole picture, it reminds me that even though I'm a Muslim, I might, like you were saying, I might be worshiping other things, and this is a correction to remember that all of my needs are addressed by the same thing. In this case, our Rabb, right? Like I know that Brother Birkan always asks, like when we say Allah, like who is Allah, right? But when we think about our sustainer, all of our needs are sustained by the same thing. So I think that like when we describe Allah that way, like as our sustainer, then the whole picture makes sense.
That part comes up. Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
I was going to just add on to when we're talking about Allah, and I know we've been talking a lot about how we turn to him in a time of need or in a time of desperation or because we have to. But for me, it's, or the way that I don't know, for me, it's kind of the reverse. Instead of going to Allah for the need, it's seeing how my needs are already met, and worship in itself is a form, ultimately, as like gratitude is what it is. So even seeing Allah as somebody go to for needs and all of that, I like, you know, at the very beginning of Fatiha, it starts with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So when I think of Allah, I think of Ar-Rahman Rahim, and I've been like studying the names of Allah and all of that. And the more you study, the more you see that how much Allah does for you without you ever asking for it, without you ever even expressing it. And ibadah in itself isn't necessarily these red lines that I'm trying to stay in between, or like Allah isn't watching over us with such a watchful eye because he wants to punish us. He's just trying to guide us back just out of his love, out of his fear, or not out of his fear, but out of his care for you. So when I think of like ibadah, worship, Allah in itself, I think of it much more in the sense of I have so many blessings, and every time I have a need or something that I want, I come back to this. I come back to the present. I come back to being so present, being so grateful for every single thing, even if it's something like, you know, we're talking about how, you know, I might be worshiping something else, right? Something from the dunya. You can very easily redirect it to, it's okay that I have this want or this need or even this obsession, but I'm going to connect Allah to it. Allah inspired me to want this thing so that I'd make dua. Allah inspired me to go after this thing, to pursue after this thing, or to, you know, I don't know, be an entrepreneur or something like that for a reason. So I don't know. I reframe a lot of things like that. And like, you know, there are different what's it called, frequencies for different emotions. And so guilt and shame are all the way at the bottom, and at the very top is love and enlightenment and all of that. So when you worship out of that kind of feeling and that emotion, you don't drag yourself to ibadah. You don't drag yourself to, oh, I have to do this many dhikr, or I have to pray within this time, or I can't mess up. You do it out of love because you are so grateful and you love Allah so much, and you're reflecting basically the love that Allah is pouring to you. That was kind of the point I wanted to make.
Jazakallah khairan. One point that I would like to mention, like for instance, if you see, probably you have seen pictures of small birds opening their mouth, and then mom comes and feeds the bird. So what is going on there? Birds are in need of food, and they're just crying. And their provider, metaphorically speaking in this example, mom comes and answers their call, right? Now, if Brother Birkan's daughter, Huda here, was asking for a candy, and then she mixes the address and comes to me and says, Yusuf, give me candy. What would I do? Of course, I have to look at Brother Birkan's and Sister Aisha's eyes, because if I give her candy without their permission, I'm going to be in trouble. So if they just say, okay, I give it to Huda. So she is asking from the wrong address, but it's being fulfilled with the permission, with the sign from the parent. So in this life, we are like those birds. We keep asking, like my lungs are asking for oxygen. All my needs, like I am nothing but a need from beginning to end. The very simplest thing, which is the air that we consume, I am in need of that. And do I actively ask for that? Definitely I do. The evidence for that is just close your nose for a few seconds and you will realize that, oh, actually you were constantly asking that, because you will just start turning purple and then you will just throw the hand. Like, this is how innately you are asking for oxygen. And that is being provided, as the sister was mentioning. It has been given for however many years I live. It is being provided in real time for so long. In this regard, I am a slave. I am so needy, but I either didn't pay attention to, or I was a Greenpeace volunteer and I was super happy with the trees for providing me with oxygen. Like, I am that sort of a person who thinks that, oh, thank you, Mother Nature, for this breeze. Like, I am worshiping the wrong source in this regard. So correcting this and saying that we worship to whom we started with, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We said anything praiseworthy, oxygen, could only be the gift of one who is also the owner of light, owner of sound. Rabbul Alameen means this. Like, my sustainer of oxygen cannot be anyone other than the sustainer of water. Rabbul Alameen means this, right? Rabb of one can only be the Rabb of all. Sustainer of one has to be the sustainer of all needs. Are we clear with this? Because somebody mentioned that that's not clear to me. Yeah.
No, just one clarification question, because earlier you said, what does it mean for someone to say, worship your Lord? And what's that? So then you said sustainer, and then you said again, Rabbul Alameen, the Lord of the world. So, and owner. So when you say worship your Rabb, like, yeah, worship your Rabb, that's you mean also worship your owner.
So,
like, there's ownership of me. I am owned.
I am owned, but more so, I don't know if I misused the word, but Rabb is sustainer, provider,
okay,
or maintainer.
Yeah.
And I am being maintained. This is the part that I miss.
Yeah.
I feel like I just happened. Actually, I was talking to our little Ali a few days ago, 2 days ago. No, yesterday. I came from work and he just wanted to chatterbox. So he was sitting in this stairs. Says, oh, my hand was cut. He got the knife and cut his hand. This is why we should put those locks to the drawers. And he said, but it got healed. I said, oh, Allah healed your hand. He said, no, it got healed by itself. This is a 4-year-old. And he's going to Islamic school. And he joins the discussions as well. He hasn't gone through the secular education yet, I thought, but somehow this is what he said. It got healed by itself. Like, he doesn't see a provider, a sustainer, a maintainer in there. It just happens by itself. Like, recognizing your neediness and realizing that somebody fulfilled it, being thankful to that person, that one is absent at this point, right? This should be an eye-opener for all of us, because he's an innocent 4-year-old. We have gone through so much of materialist secular education on top of that. And now we think that I have a Rabb, I have a maintainer. I mean, I maintain myself. also partially, I don't know, my boss and my wife feeds me, and like I distribute it to things out there, but I say still, I am the captain of this ship by myself, at least when it comes to protecting myself. I do majority of the part. And then, yeah, of course, like I was born, so I guess God created me at some point. Like this is being the idea. But when it comes to we worship, no, I am from beginning to end, I am needy at this moment. We are not pushing it to the past. We are not saying that, yeah, sustainer, provider, at some point give me a shape. No, no. At this moment, I am in need of oxygen. And the proof is I close my nose and my body shouts at my face saying that I am in need of this oxygen at this moment. Who gives this oxygen? Or the tree gives it to me? Is it really? If I think that trees give oxygen to me, this is what I worship. But if I recognize that, no, the giver of oxygen cannot be anyone, like the example we used for lecture, for discussions ago, the owner, the maker of the milk cannot be anyone other than the maker or the maintainer of the Milky Way. This was our motto for that discussion. Yes. My motto, okay. My motto. So this is how the maker of this oxygen, the giver of this oxygen cannot be anyone other than who does, I don't know, there's also around the sun, they talk about some storms. What do they say? Radioactive storm, sun, whatever. Same one has to be the sustainer. Before him, I recognize my neediness. Then I likewise say that, oh, Ahmed is also as needy. Ahmed is asking from the same one as well.
So I assume we all know that the word ibadah, like the worship, is the same with the abd, right? Like I assume this is clear. So sometimes when we use the word ibadah, like a worship, we use it as if it refers to the things that the Muslim people do. Like we do, for instance, 5 times prayer, like the fasting or dhikr, we give zakah, right? These are worship. But the word abd is used as in Quran, it's so generic. It's not for Muslim people only. So the other day I was reading from Surah Furqan, the first ayah actually, and you have many such uses in Quran, right? Here the word is the abdihi, his abd. Like it goes like Tabarakallazi nazal al-Furqan ala abdihi. So he sent down, I mean, glory to him, who sent down the Furqan, the criterion, or however you translate, to his abds. Sometimes we see that the same way creator used the word abd as abdi, like my abd. Right? So who's the addressee, you think, when the Quran says abd? It's the Muslim people, because the remaining of the ayah goes as, so that it will become a nazira, reminder, lil alamin, to all possible worlds or all possible, the alam, it's like everything you can think of, any kind of system. Okay. So it's obvious that the abd is not restricted to those who call themselves as Muslim or the believers. The same way, the word ibadah, the worship, is not restricted to things that a believer consciously, voluntarily does. That's the reason author was separating when he was talking about the worship. He says the voluntary worship is one kind, but there are all other kinds as well.
like the worship through need, worship through capacity, and he uses some other, the versions as well. Yes, in an Islamic study context, the word ibadah, worship, means something specific. It has some, connotations, etc. But when we are studying such topics to understand the belief itself, right, to establish our belief more strongly, then we shouldn't restrict ourselves to such narrow understandings. So what is the word abd as in used in Quran? Okay? Not in philosophy or the Islamic studies, whatever, in Quran, how it is used. It is the mirror image of Rabb, Lord. There is Rububiyyah, and on the other side there is Ubudiyyah, right? So that's the reason we keep saying that only to the extent you see a lordship, you can claim that you are a worshipper. So when you look at the creation, what do you see? As we studied in the text, what was the first thing he said when he said firstly and then secondly? He said, when we look at the creation, we see that all these needs are sustained within a perfect order. Right? At least the way I remember. So we look at the creation, we see a machinery of needs and the sustained needs. We see animals, we see animal food, right? We see plants, we see plant food. We see human beings, we see human food. We see objects that need certain things to stay as an object. For instance, the certain range of temperature is needed for this glass to stay as a glass. Okay? And we see that this certain range of temperature is sustained. So it stays as a glass. We take it as a natural phenomena, right? If there is no change, but this is one of the laws of the Newton, right? If there is no change, no action, or no the variation, right? You can translate it as that way. But the author says, no, like don't look at with the wrong lenses, because the things themselves cannot sustain themselves. We studied this a lot. When you look at the creation, you will see all these needs and how they are sustained. Again, don't jump into the conclusion that, oh yeah, there is God, Allah, sustaining everything. We are not there yet. We just see that there is a need and it is sustained. And I start asking questions, who's sustaining this? When I realize that the thing itself cannot sustain this need, the plant, can plant attract these nutritions, like the minerals in the earth, and order them, come to me? Can we imagine something like that? No. So when we realize that, we say the plant is not the Lord. Whoever is sustaining this plant, it's not the plant itself. So if plant is not the Lord, plant is the other thing. What is it? Abd, which means receiver. Okay? It's not the transmitter, but the receiver. That's what abd means. By its existence, it needs receiving bounty. This is what it is. The plant needs to be created. Even it cannot sustain its existence. If something else, we don't know what it is, does not give existence to a plant, plant would just vanish. There is no room, any, the necessity that the plant will stay as a plant there in front of my eye. There's no such room. But it continues, being a plant and staying that way. I say something maintaining its existence. Plant cannot do it itself, which means plant is an abd, receiver of existence. And then I say plant need food, but I look at the plant itself, all I see is need. It cannot sustain itself, because if, for instance, I do not water, the next day plant become what? Faded, right? Come on, plant, sustain yourself for water. It cannot. Cold rain, it cannot. It means the plant is an abd of water, abd of minerals, abd of air, everything you can count, right? Because there's something else providing it. So extrapolated everything in the creation, we see that everything in the creation, one way or another, constantly being sustained. And it's not themselves that this sustenance is coming from. So they are all on the receiving part. They are all abds. Because something else is maintaining, providing, sustaining, as brother said, right? And all these things within Quran, in the Quranic terminology, referred as what? Lord, Rabb, maintainer, taking care of, right? Somebody's taking care of, somebody's maintaining, somebody's sustaining, providing, putting you from one shape to another shape. This is what Rabb is. So when I look at the creation, to the extent I see this providence, like somebody is providing, somebody is sustaining, to the extent I see this, I say, I'm an abd, worshipper. How do I worship? With my needs, right? How do I worship? With my potential. As a human being, I have this potential to understand something, but I cannot understand if it led to me. If I left to myself, I cannot understand. Somebody needs to give me this understanding. Through my capacity, potential, I ask for it. I worship, right? This book, for instance, is an abd. Abd of what? To be read. This book can be understood, right? But somebody needs to provide this. So through its capacity, it asks its Lord, oh, the one who creates me with these colorful shapes, with geometrical shapes, right? I don't even know, it says. When I look at it, I see that it does not know. I don't even know what they do with me, right? In me. Please make me understood. Right? It worships. The apple, you see an apple, it worships. It says, oh, the one who made me, right? Made me eat. Eaten, ate, what is the happening? The third form. Eaten, yes. Eaten, right? It worship. And then my body, with the needs, it says, oh, the one who creates me, whoever you are, right? Make me full. I feel hungry. This blood needs to be circulated. It's a worship. Please circulate me. Otherwise, I will get dirty, right? I will not transfer the required, the oxygen from here to there. Circulate me, please. That's a worship. So when Quran says, my abds, it means everything in the creation. You are in need of me, and here I am. So this way, when we say ibadah, the worship, we means all these. And what about the daily prayer? It's a part of it. I also have consciousness, right? With my consciousness, I also what is it? Join to this universal worship. I say everything is worshiping, and I choose to worship voluntarily, as our sister asked. Right? There's a voluntary the worship. I choose to join them. I see the order in my body, and I say, okay, my consciousness should also do the same thing. Otherwise, it will be out of order. It will be so ugly. I mean, imagine you going to let's say, a reception, like a conference. Everybody following a certain etiquette, right? Nobody asking questions, for instance, like there's a speaker speaking. And when people wants to ask a question, what they do, they raise their hands, right? You observe this, and you see someone else just jumping out and asking questions without taking permission. And every time he does that, the speaker is interrupted and the order is disturbed. And how would you feel? You would look at him and say that, what are you doing? Right? You would be ashamed, on behalf of him. The same thing. You see the creation, you see in the creation everything following this protocol, the etiquette, right? Raising their hands, except your consciousness, except your, the mind, jumping out, asking questions as it was, the ones. All these creatures ask for permission to drink something, for instance. Your mind does not. Oh, I will drink water, I will drink alcohol, I will drink this, I will drink that. Who cares, right? The rest of the creation is ashamed. When you realize this, you say, okay, no. I should voluntarily join this, right? So this is our worship. It has a place, but the rest of it as well is the proper worship.
Uh, I think I have a question. So I feel like from what you said, it's very clear that a abd is someone in need, and the provider for that need is his Lord or their Lord. But then, like, the conclusion would be from what you said is the plant, basically, the minerals are the Lord, the water is Lord. So I would say the logical conclusion that there are multiple lords, like even you said that, I don't know, I eat the plant, so now I'm hungry and I eat the plant provided me with this need, so now the plant is, or meat or whatever, is my Lord. So I see the relationship between the abd and the ma'bud or the Lord, but I don't see how we should reach the conclusion that actually at the end there is only one Lord of all of these things. Like, this was a bit missing, because the whole point of the ayah is that iyyaka na'budu. I think for the people who, maybe for someone who doesn't doesn't know Arabic, so it's very important. There's a big difference between saying I worship you and ana a'buduka, like I worship you, and because it means that I worship you, but I can worship other things too. But the ayah says iyyaka a'budu, it's you who I worship. So I feel like it has to be clear that how I will reach a conclusion that there's only one Lord, one sustainer, especially that I have multiple needs and these needs are being sustained in different ways. So why am I not concluding that each of these, sustainers are actually my Lord? Food can be my boss because he provides my income. That's why we please them, not for anything else. Recommendation letters. Like my mom at some point, right? Because she was also providing, my father, like all of this, the husband, the friends. I mentioned. Arsalan, they're being unfair. I said the husband. Like, yeah, I think it should be clear how also like what Brother Yusuf mentioned about Ali. It's interesting because like it means like the fitra should basically, like if a child 4 years old who is being raised up, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this household. I'm just saying that this the conclusion would be that, oh, he did not reach to the idea that, you know, someone like healed his wound, but it healed itself. And then maybe if he grows older and he studies a little bit of biology in school and he learns about like, you know, white blood cells and platelets and whatever, he learns how blood, you know, gets like whatever like stops, how a wound stops bleeding, then he will realize, oh, these were the ones that healed my wound. Like the ultimate conclusion will not be that, you know, there's a Lord that healed my wound, but actually these things. So from the wound healing itself to multiple cells work together to heal this wound.
Mashallah, you find yourself a supporter.
I was having similar thoughts, and then I was wondering if in Arabic there's like this difference between like a worship with a capital W, as we have God, and God with like capital G, right? Like, can worship ever be towards something other than God? Is there like a different word for it in Arabic, or like is the description or the definition of worship exclusively for our sustainer?
Yeah. And just adding to the conversation, there was this one discussion I had with my coworker. She's very secular. She's like, does not practice any religion, completely atheist. And I was like, I got a free measuring tape because I was looking for one and I did not buy because I was busy. And then it was all over my Instagram algorithm. And then I got it in my own building. There was a vendor show and I got a free tape. And I was just telling her like how I was looking for it. I was going to buy it in a few days and I got one for free. And she was like, universe provided it for you, you know, universe brought it to you. And at that point, I was like, the universe provided this to you, like, you know, it brought it to you. Like, and I often hear people saying that, you know, universe arranges your affair. If you're working hard, the entire world basically going to be direct their flow with your flow. So, and I've heard a lot of these things from the secular people, and I'm like, if they believe that, you know, there's anything other than us who is controlling our affairs, then why don't we question this, that, you know, who is that being who arranges all of our affairs for us, who provides for us? Because that was the one thing that I really thought about, like, okay, yeah, like she said this, although she's like so like not religious. Yeah.
I think the question that you raised, I think you somewhat addressed it when you were talking about all these things. That like, if you think water is the sustainer for, let's say, the plant, like then you go back to the water and see what sustains water. And then like ultimately, like at the end of the day, you will come to a point where you'll realize that all of this is still maintained by whatever is not this. So like, that's how you get to, I think that's how you get to the conclusion that like that's the true sustainer.
So before passing the microphone to Brother Birkan, since you asked it to him, probably he would like to answer that. So I would just like to remind you a text that we studied in the past, and it was like a journey. And the idea was we were imagining a representative of unbelief, such as atheist, materialist, whatever you call it. And this owner of this ideology was trying to claim ownership or sustainership over a thing. And it was starting from a particle. And it was saying that I do you, or I maintain you. Like meaning, in our day-to-day language, electron spins by itself, like this sort of a jargon, but the author was explaining in a metaphorical conversational language and saying that this representative of unbelief was trying to claim hand over a particle. What was the response of the particle? The particle was saying that, sure, if it was always throughout the journey, it was two things. It was saying that, but I do this and this and that type of jobs, like in terms of particle, for example. I can enter to Ahmed's body, I can enter to Birkan's body. Like I do many different jobs and I do this perfectly. And if you can make me do this, meaning if you can provide me with this much of knowledge and wisdom and will, and not only that, it was saying, also I work in harmony with things above me, let's say, molecules. Like I get into the part of a molecule and I start collaborating with other particles, other molecules, other organs and whatnot. So he was saying that if you can do this first, meaning give me this much knowledge, and also if you can also claim ownership over the molecule, then come and claim ownership over me. And then it was saying that, okay, let me go and claim ownership over the molecule, then I will prove to the particle that I can handle it. It was a long journey like this, but it was first showing us, big picture, was that this is why I'm going back to my motto. If you cannot, anyone who cannot sustain the Milky Way cannot make milk. This is how the creation of, like right before our eyes, so much intermingled. Maker of one has to be the maker of all. This is why in Brother Birkan's word, when he said, you are an abd of water, yes, this is initially how you see it, but as Ahmed said, but how about the water? Does it sustain itself? Like the creation is so intertwined that then you will go and ask the water, and the water said, no, I cannot be your sustainer. As in the metaphor, Huda comes and asks for candy from me. I give the candy after Brother Birkan says yes, but in fact, Brother Birkan is the giver of candy, not me in this case, in this very simple metaphor, but in the life as well. So this is why we need to really ask that question to ourselves. And one tiny update though, and it's, of course, these examples we give are all limited problematic metaphors. They are not the actual real thing. It's not that, yes, water sustains me and clouds sustain water. Clouds are sustained by sea. Sea is sustained by God. Like it's not this sort of a chain. It's not that the creator, my creator is distant to me. No, my creator is the sustainer of the sea, sustainer of the cloud at the same time, sustainer of the rain and the water and me all at the same time, because none of them are capable of maintaining themselves either. So this is why, again, going back to Salih alayhi salam's verse from last week's Tuesday, Salih alayhi salam was explicitly inviting them to worship Allah, saying there's no deity other than him, and then saying that my Rabb is qareeb, close, which means it must be that Salih alayhi salam came and saw me that I am entertaining the idea of a distant creator. He says, no, Yusuf, your creator is very near to you. Since you imagine him to be far away, you start thinking that, oh, my God sustains my boss sustains me. Like this is the very problem we are talking about, right? Whether we can.
Before, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the ayah says, the Salih alayhi salam comes and says, do not worship the ones who cannot answer you, or the ones who are not near. Or is it the other way around? Like the worship the one who can answer you and the near.
Is near.
And answering. Yes. So anyway, I just realized, like I was thinking, why would such a question arise? And then when Ahmed and the brother Yusuf said, repeated what I said, like the abd of water. Let me correct one thing, but I'm glad I made the mistake now. I was just, the mixing two languages, which, turned out to be a terrible thing. I meant a plant is a needy of water. like has the abdness when it comes to water. That's what I meant. Otherwise, it's not the abd of water. But again, I'm glad I made this mistake, because this question is very important, and I agree with you. Like, this is what we do. We assume that our Lord, our sustainer, is water. Our sustainer is medicine, our boss, etc. We do assume, as a human being, just like Ali, probably there's nothing wrong with the household. Yeah, I don't hear such things in my home, but yes, as a human beings, right? We do assume that. That's the reason Quran keeps telling us, do not worship, do not worship, do not worship. All those who believe, believe. Such an ayah. I mean, if you look from just a linguistic perspective, what are you telling me? Those who believe, believe. It means those who, the claim, those who arrive to the belief at some time, right? The structure is the past tense when it says those who believe, right? Those who came to the belief, reached to the belief to some level, whatever, believe. Meaning, even if you are a believer, in your life, you will assume, continue assuming, that the water is your sustainer. Isn't it possible, you said, right? Yes, it's not only possible, but it also our reality. That's what we do. But just because we do constantly, including, the wise people like Ali, for instance, innocent people like Ali does, it doesn't mean that it's something we should choose to do. So we have to question ourselves. Does it make sense or not? That's what separates you from a stone, right? You have to ask. Yes, I assume water is sustaining me. You say, okay, what does it mean to sustain me? When I'm thirsty, what happens? My entire body change from one state to another state, right? The way the blood is circulating is different. The way the veins are, the behaving is different. Their elasticity, everything is changing by just being thirsty. The way neurons are activated is different. The ways I see, it's different. If you don't drink enough water and keep reading, for instance, you will have headache. Your eyes will start aching, right? Everything about you is changing with thirst. And you claiming that this water, this lifeless, the mindless, blind water knows everything about my body, the entire set of systems, enter my body, says, don't worry, eyes, I'm coming. I know what you need, right? I will trigger all these actions so that, the eyes will get what they need. That's your claim. I mean, not you, but my claim. When I say water sustains me, right? To water to get into my body, just forget about, how it acts with the systems. Just to get inside my body, it has to control something called gravity. With no controlling gravity, the water cannot enter my mouth and then travel down. The water has to command this gravity, whatever it is. Pull me down, right? And then it has to control the air, because air decides to stay where they are, where it is. Nothing can move, right? Something to move, everything else need to go away. So as Yusuf's beautiful motto, if you want to control water, Or if you want to, be water, you have to control waterway. There's something like that? No. The entire universe. Right? So either you claim and consciously do that, please. I mean, don't play with the words as these, the so-called scientists do. Don't play with words. Just consciously and clearly tell me that you believe this water has endless power, endless will, endless knowledge, endless control over everything in this universe. Tell me this, that you believe in that, and then I will take you serious. And I say that, oh, maybe, let me see. Otherwise, just saying that maybe this water is sustaining me, it's saying almost nothing. In that sense, yes, I say I'm an abd, just like water is an abd. And water is being used as a means to sustain me. But it's not the water that sustains me. When I realize this, I say, okay, there must be something else who controls everything, who knows everything sustaining me. That's how I reach. And Ali will learn this. How? He thinks Yusuf knows everything, right? The moment he realized that he's just an old guy, he will say, oh, okay, there must be something else beyond Yusuf. And then he says, oh, yes, this professor he knows everything. And then he will start taking classes, and he will realize that he doesn't know even how to, talk to people properly. I say, okay, he's not even. It's a long journey, but eventually, inshallah, may Allah guide him. Inshallah, before reaching the grave, that's our goal, all of us. Before reaching the grave, inshallah, we will say, okay, now I understand that he is my Lord.
So to wrap up, when I say İyyâke na'budu ve İyyâke nestaîn in my prayer, oh, there was a comment? Okay. Let me just finish this, and then we can take the other microphone to Sister Maria. Just like look at the solar system, there's a balance which needs to be maintained. Look at the particle, there's a balance with electrons, protons, neutrons, which needs to be maintained. It's in need of that to be established. In your body, there's a balance which needs to be maintained and is being maintained. So then I am recognizing that I am an abd and my needs are being sustained, just like the particle is an abd, which is being sustained, and the solar system is an abd, and it is being maintained. When I say we worship you and we seek your help, I mean all of them. Like my na'budu and nasta'in in my Surah Fateha could and should encompass this giant congregation, this giant jama'ah of the prayer. Sister Maria, go ahead.
We talked a lot tonight about the recognition and standing witness to what is a true source of causality of Allah, maintaining us through all these different ways, and that being a form of worship. But I'm trying to connect that better to the other external forms of worship that we do, because recognition, I guess, on its own is not enough. Like, I could be like, yeah, I understand to some extent that I'm not the one who's producing the results from my data, that every time I do this experiment, I ask Allah for it to be replicable and that the results match. But then how do you understand the necessity, the need, or how do you jump from recognition to active worship of prayer, of dhikr? What is it? Particularly, I'm curious with your bottom up approach, because I'm not super familiar with that. How do you, if I was born on an island by myself and somehow Allah had guided me to understand, oh yes, I understand that the plants are need the water, and therefore I am, I am only sustained by the one who sustained this whole island. How will I come to the conclusion that my consciousness needs to express this worship in an additional way than just recognition? And on the other hand, you also have Muslims who pray, fast, but they're doing all the external activities, and maybe they're struggling with their faith, and they don't necessarily believe, or they don't understand the recognition of it. So what is the connection between recognition, consciousness of being like, I understand Allah is the Rabb of everything, and how do I understand the purpose of salah in that context? How do I make it sincere? And yeah, just kind of trying to connect all those different forms of worship.
So answers are going to be quick because we are already 10 minutes of time. But when like this cute baby, I really appreciate the cuteness of Buddha. But I don't leave it just in my heart. I go and just want to squeeze her. Softer. But with your mom, you love your mom, and you don't just hide your love in your heart, but you just go and hug her. Like, human is not simply an intellectual creature. We have those emotions, and we interact with the universe, which our thinking is just digesting those meanings. And even after digestion, you go ahead and hug your mom. So prayer, you can be 100% convinced about your creator being your provider, sustainer, but without eating food, how are you going to experience that? Like, it is part of the deal. Even if you understood today that Allah is my sustainer, tomorrow we are going to eat. You will be created with the need also to eat, but as you're eating, you will realize that you appreciate more that He's your sustainer. So it's going to provide you a means in which you are renewing, re-experiencing this joy of being together with your sustainer, with your provider. So prayer, like salat, with all its motions, is just this recognition getting into action for you to remember it again, because you're standing before Him, you're bowing before Him, you're putting your forehead to the earth, reminding your neediness and Him being provider. It's a reminder for you. And you're a human being, and you have this physical reality with which you tend to arrive to those sensory information or feelings in the first place. So we cannot say, oh, I got it, I'm done. No. And even that the need is being renewed. Why did the creator renew the need of your oxygen? Okay, I got that He's the provider of oxygen. No, He says, no, you forget. You're even insan comes from nisyan, as they say, you forget. And also the appreciation is something in there, which is like a live, like, are you afraid? Are you tired of loving your mom, for example? Like, it's not something you keep enjoying it, right? So the creator, I find myself, let's not go top down. I find myself that I am being given existence in this ever renewing need state of provider, sustainer, to be loved. So prayer is just a response to that. But when it comes to your second question, it goes a little deeper than that. If I was in an island and whatnot, I am not, first of all, but even if, let's say we are, then the question is more so in the sense that, was I going to be provided with answers to my questions? This goes back to, would you expect your creator to speak to you in the first place? And would you expect your creator to provide you guidance with a prophetic human example as well? Because, if the question goes to how would I know, how am I going to pray and whatnot, what would be its physical manifestation? Very legit question, but the form of that question goes more so, which we studied this separately at some point, belief in prophethood. Why should there be prophets in the first place? But this is why I'm not getting into that part of it, but just answering the part related to, is the physicality needed? Of course, because you're a real, physical, tangible human being. And this is how you remind to yourself and also realize it yourself. That's how it works. Okay. So we are 15 minutes over time. So inshallah, let's conclude here.
جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.